patience. You know, understanding that this is, you know, this hobby, if you want to sound like Dave Weckl, if you want to sound like Harvey Mason, if you want to sound like Peter Erskine or whoever it is, Peter Erskine didn't sound like that after a day or a week. Peter Erskine sounds like that today because of a lifelong pursuit in that category of music.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's difficult in that pursuit when you're looking so far down the road. It's difficult to acknowledge those little milestones that happen on a daily or weekly basis. So I think it's good for people to, number one, in terms of how they structure their practice, to understand what the, you know, what their, how to fit that into their life. You know, I'm 38, I travel quite a bit, I work every day, I've got a family, I'm the one responsible for making dinner. I mean, there's a lot of things that are not drumming related that are on my plate on a daily basis. So for me to go, I'm going to practice 3 hours a day, I'm setting myself up for disappointment. You know, so for me, I got to go, gosh, I've got 30 to 45 minutes a day, 4 days a week, 3 days a week, every day, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
How am I going to use that time so that I feel like I'm accomplishing something? So for me, my focus may be a little bit more narrow and specific because of my limited time. Because ultimately for me, I need to feel like I am accomplishing something, you know, in order for me to feel good about it. And I think in terms of when you practice, essentially you're teaching yourself. That's what practice is, you're teaching yourself. Now you can get some information from other people, from your instructor, from your other bandmates, based on some feedback that they give you, or from, you know, third parties, whoever they are, from a book, from a DVD. But ultimately, you're taking that information, you're sitting down in a room by yourself, and you're teaching yourself. And I think one of the most important things is you got to know about yourself. Just like I've got to know about you if I teach you. I got to know what makes you tick. I got to know what your goals are. I got to know what your week looks like, so I know what is reasonable to ask of you. You've got to really know that about yourself. And when you're, you know, 13, 15 years old, you don't really look in the mirror like that.
No.
You know,
no,
so it's really difficult. But when I think people really start hitting a stride with practicing and getting better and setting themselves on a course for improving, they start to figure those things out. And they start to get creative with how they spend their practice time, how they log their practice time, what kind of goals, what kind of regiment or what they put in front of themselves to accomplish. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. It's music, it's not science.
Yeah.
So there is no right way.
Right.
You know, the only right way is to start to move towards whatever you set out to be the right way. Something to be said for maybe not being so quick to dismiss things that are quote unquote easy.
Yeah.
You know, I call them deceivingly difficult. You know, and not that you need to play like that. Like if you're playing that tune, when you master that tune, it doesn't look like it's difficult. You know, that's not the point. The point is to understand that to master it at the level that he mastered that track, it takes a whole lot on multiple levels, and it takes the ability to not only understand it, be able to reproduce it, but be able to do it in a way that's relaxed and allows you to maintain, you know, two hands on the wheel while you're doing it. And it's kind of funny. Today I was on the porch with my daughter, and we were listening to some music, and she goes, is that some of your music, Daddy? And I said, no, you want to listen to some of my music, honey? So I dialed up on my phone, I played a track, and she's listening to it. She goes, Daddy, that sounds easy. You know, and I kind of smiled, and I'm going, well, honey, it kind of is and it kind of isn't. You know?
Let's see you play it.
Yeah. But there's a lot of people that can play that, but it's like, you know, to play it with good quality, and that's kind of what. And even the higher level stuff, like when I'm judging or when I was auditioning for drum corps, and we would progress through to more difficult stuff. Personally, what I'm looking at as we're progressing to the difficult, I'm not looking for the difficult stuff in that audition process. I'm looking to see if the foundation maintains. You know, as that single stroke roll gets faster, what happens to the evenness of those notes? What happens to the quality of sound? You know, what happens to tension or lack of tension? Are we using the drum and the stick to, you know, to get rebounded, to get sound happening? Are we stifling that by choking the sticks and introducing tension and larger muscle groups that don't need to play into something like that?
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about understanding that it's a whole continuum. It's not like once you get to the advanced stuff that the beginning stuff doesn't have any validity, because to be honest with you, it has a ton of validity. You know, and in my progression through my musical life, one of the things that I'm trying to return to is that simplicity, you know, because the drum corps thing for me, you know, sometimes it could get very focused on technicality, you know, technical proficiency, which is what they're doing today is at an incredible level, far beyond what I did when I marched. But what I'm trying to return to in my ears and in my hands is simplicity, you know, which is a lot of fun because it just means everything's really relaxed and it's really enjoyable and it's you know, I want to make it look easy, I want to make it feel easy, I want to make it feel good. I don't think a lot of students at the high school level are prepared to consider what all is out there in music. There's some great resources on Berklee in Boston, Berklee School of Music website that shows and describes all of the careers that are possible in music. And you know,
that's great.
When we graduate high school, we think of, you know, we're exposed to probably 90% playing. You know, we play in jazz band and pep band and marching band and concert band, and we do solo and ensemble, and we probably play in a band at home, you know, in high school or something like that.
Yeah.
You probably do a little bit of theory, so maybe, okay, well, I could be a composer or an arranger.
Okay.
But there's beyond that, there's a lot of other things. You know, there's people making their livings in Hollywood scoring movie scores or becoming, you know, sound engineers or working on the equipment side of things like I'm doing now. You know, in a vast majority of different roles, everything from product managers and specialists to engineers and, you know, well beyond that. So there's quite a bit to do out there. As a drummer, you know, a lot of drummers, and I was absolutely guilty of this growing up. My goal as a drummer growing up was to impress other drummers.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to do.
And I think most people start out there.
And I learned later in life, it's like, whoa, wait a second, you're impressing the wrong people with the wrong stuff. I think, at least, you know, when you're a drummer, unless you're playing in like a King Crimson cover band and you have another drummer or something to that effect, that kind of set, or percussion on, you know, you're playing with a bass player and a guitar player or a horn section, a singer, and your goal, your purpose in life is supposed to be to enhance whatever's going on there. And my personal goal is to make everybody feel like they would always play better if I'm behind them. That means I'm setting them up right. I'm making things really easy. I'm making things really feel good. Matter of fact, one of the best compliments I've ever received playing drums was when I was subbing for this big band that was playing a recital for Arthur Miller Dance Studios. So it was basically just a big folder of jazz band, you know, big band charts. Okay. And it was pull out number 472 and throw it up. And it's because it was a dance recital, you know, we did everything from, you know, merengue to jazz waltz and everything between. And we got done with the gig. And the trumpet player turned around and goes, "Man, it was really easy playing with you today." And I'm like, "Yes." I mean, that was still to this day, like, that's the compliment. If I had to pick one compliment to get after every gig, that's the one.
I never thought that's a great way to think about it, is that your job is to make the music feel good to the rest of the band, or make it come easily or come naturally.
Or to convey whatever, you know, if it's an original composition, or, I mean, ultimately everything's an original composition. Right. But to convey, like, to know what the tune is doing, and to make decisions, not just to react, which is the cool thing, because when I sit down and I play a song, I'm doing a record right now with a buddy of mine, and I'm treating every song like a completely new adventure. And I'm listening to the song going, well, I got some beats in my back pocket that I could play, but this is an opportunity for me to put a couple more beats in my back pocket, or a couple more different approaches. And in order for me to do that, I've got to make sure I'm really listening and making decisions, which is excellent, because I can play a song, I can record myself playing that song, and then assess myself as somebody who would assess me anyways would be doing so from their couch, listening to the song, not being the drummer of the band, but listening to the song. You know, am I getting in the way of the song, or am I enhancing the song? You know, and if the answer is anything other than enhancing the song, then I got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what do I need to do to tuck myself a little bit more effortlessly into that. Well, I think the number one thing is that can answer both those questions is private lessons. Okay. There is no substitution, you know, and I say this all the time as a teacher. I say this to my band parents when I was a teacher. You know, yes, I have your son or daughter in class, and yes, we work really hard, and we've got a whole curriculum set out here, and we're chipping away. But make no mistake, there is absolutely no substitute for you sitting in a room one-on-one with a professional that plays your instrument every single day. That is the number one thing that I would recommend is private lessons. Now, how much, how long, how often, that's completely up to the individual and the family.
Okay.
But that individual, because of that relationship, that close relationship, is going to be able to, and the longer that relationship exists, the more specific that curriculum can be developed to that individual student based on the growth and the successes and maybe the little temporary failures. Well, that assignment didn't really do what we wanted to. Let's try this one over here. It's imperative. It's absolutely imperative. I think that's important, and I think not just being in a practice room with a teacher and not just being in a room by yourself, but go play with people.
Okay.
Go play with other, go play with a bass player. The guitar player might not know the cool jargon that drummers know, but if the drummer's listening and can do a little translation, there's a lot of valuable information because it's a team effort, and the drummer is the expert of that domain. The guitar player is the expert of that domain. The bass player is the expert of that domain, and you're trying to work together. You're trying to bring all those worlds together. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, I guess, why are we playing music? We're not playing music to sit in a practice room and go through exercises. You're playing in the practice room because there's something that you want to derive out of playing with other people. It could be the satisfaction of creating music. It could be sharing that with other people, recording it, live performance. But I think there has to be a balance of those, few different points. Private lessons, obviously some assessment tools, recording yourself, things like that, videotaping yourself, but also get out there and play with people. Start right now.
And I think that's probably one of the best ways to enjoy it early on is to be playing with others.
That's what I still enjoy that the most.
Yeah.
I love recording, and I love, doing clinics, and I love judging, but man, there's nothing for me like playing in front of a room with a bunch of people who is really enjoying what I'm enjoying. It's like It makes me feel connected to them.
Yeah.
And it's a great feeling. And knowing that there's not a lot of people, I'm blessed with the ability to, and the craving to pursue this and make music, and there's not a lot of people that get to sit in that seat and enjoy that transaction, with the audience. Well, that is a super loaded question.
I know, it's $1 million question.
It is $1 million question, and unfortunately there is no right answer.
Right.
But I will offer a bit of advice. My daughter's 6. She's just finished her second year of piano. Mm-hmm. And I know her, and I know, again, trying to assess very non-biased, I don't want, daddy's doing music, so you have to do music. Music is, I know, because I know my daughter, music is very important to her. Mm-hmm. And so my job as a parent is to put opportunities in front of her, mm-hmm. and to try to, pat the raft down the river, as it were, with her. And sometimes it's easy to get her to practice, and sometimes it's challenging.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's a battle of inches, but it's over a course of a long period of time. Again, the Peter Erskine reference. Mm-hmm. So I don't want, I would love it if she, at 6 years old, spent 10 minutes a day practicing every day. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. Sometimes I can't get her to practice. And I think to myself, would I rather try to force her to get down there right now, do her 10 minutes because she needs to, and risk burning her out and pushing music away? Mm-hmm. Or do I want to continually nurture that craving of music and teach her about the importance of, staying active and practicing? Mm-hmm. So that's my approach on any level. Yeah. In terms of making practice more fun and enjoyable, I would try to find, again, what do you want to do with your practice time? What do you want to do with your,
set a goal?
Right. Like, what do you want to play in a live band? Do you want to record?
Okay.
And technology is pretty available these days.
Yeah.
Record yourself. Start creating something. Not only for the purposes of sharing later, but for the purpose of assessing, mm-hmm. of cataloging, and to look back a year from now and go, wow, I played like that back then.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
You have to kind of know what makes you tick. What buttons to push to get you excited. I'm the kind of guy where if I'm not excited about something, it's hard to get me to do it, unfortunately. So I know that about me. I know that in my work, when I turn around at this desk and I have to dive into 8 hours of office work, I've got to find something in me to get me excited to go, this is going to make it, how cool is this? I'm working for this company, and I'm making a difference here. I was around when that head was introduced. I tested that. I remember, so I find my little buttons that push myself. Playing music, put music on your phone or on your iPod and just playing with it, and just kind of just closing your eyes almost and getting into feeling like you're sitting in that seat, of whatever band or whatever drummer you aspire to be. I mean, that's why they call it play. You're not working music, you're playing music.
Right.
So hopefully those individuals don't have to look too far to find something fun. I think a lot of times that's not the case. What they do is they see the work in front of them. They see the goals and the assignments, and that's kind of where it stops. They don't really think through to why am I doing this and what's the application. Yeah. When you look past that to the application, that's when you start connecting those dots to, oh, okay, now I know why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So I can accomplish this. So I can play that groove I've always wanted to play, and how I can apply that. And the last thing that I would recommend, which I think is also critical, and it's especially it's hard for younger students to come to terms with because they're being fed, fragments of information. Take those fragments of information and master them like your teacher or your instructor wants you to master them, but get creative with them. Find your own voice. Make that thing yours. Find a creative way to do it on the drum set, on a keyboard. Make it fun. We all love to do what we do well. I'm a horrible basketball player. I don't like playing basketball. I'm a good drummer. I like playing drums. I'm good on a grill. I like grilling and cooking. So we all enjoy things that we do well. So identify those things, and even things that you don't do well. Once you start to begin to master them, start to also create a little library for yourself of things that you can take to incorporate into, I do this well. Here's my version of that thing. That's why, the great drummers that have carved up themselves a niche, like Steve Gadd. Before Steve Gadd, there weren't a lot of guys that sounded like Steve Gadd, because Steve Gadd took his experiences, which you can hear a lot of his marching experiences in his playing, and created a voice for himself. And that's why it looks effortless, because it's him. Me talking in this voice here is effortless because this is me. And the same thing behind the drum set. So I'm trying now, these days for me, to sound like what I sound like, based on, maybe sometimes my drum corps experience, hopefully not too much. I want to sound like a drum set player, not a drum corps guy. But I listen to a whole lot of 1970s rock and roll, so that, for me, that's in my ears, and there's a lot of things I've listened to since then, experiences that I've had that kind of hopefully come out in my playing. And it feels good because I feel like I'm doing something that's me. I feel like if somebody else sits behind even my kit for my band for a night, they're not going to really sound like me. They'll probably do a really good job, but they're not going to sound like me. And that, for me, that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
It really shocked me. There's a situation that's funny that I tell people about. There's a guy named Harvey Mason who's he's one of the most recorded drummers in the history of drums. Mm-hmm. People probably know him most from his work with Herbie Hancock, specifically the Headhunters album, Chameleon, Watermelon Man, all the songs that everybody knows are kind of like the cornerstone of funk from the 70s. Mm-hmm. And I met him at a drum corps show when I first got this job, and of course I was completely starstruck with him. And I was like, the first thing I want to say was like, I listen to you every day, which is kind of funny and cheesy, but that's, right. I enjoy that part of the job. And so I said, Harvey, why are you at a drum corps show? It was at DCI in California in 2007. And he goes, well, when I was growing up, I did a little bit of drum corps, because back then drum corps were like, every street corner it's like a grocery store. Every street corner there was a drum corps almost. Yeah. And everybody was involved back then. Steve Gadd was involved in drum corps. Billy Cobham was involved in drum corps. I mean, there's a lot of guys that did it. It was a different activity, but they did it. And he asked me, he says, well, why are you here? I said, well, I work for the company. And I said, I used to teach and march drum corps. And he goes, oh, okay, who'd you march with and teach with? And I said, well, most recently I taught with March with the Cavaliers. And his eyes got really big and didn't even think about it, but he goes, will you give me a lesson? And I instantly, I had to compose myself so I didn't laugh right in his face. But what it taught me, and what I've learned since then, is that they are really lifelong students of learning. It doesn't. There's no. with a lot of those professionals that you think are at the top of their game, you know, and they're just kind of there doing their thing, are always seeking another opportunity to learn. They've always got sticks and pads with them. I've heard stories about Arturo Sandoval, the trumpet player, how much he practices on a daily basis. You know, a guy that's already at the top of his game, you know, and it's really intriguing because they've got there because, not because they wanted to get there, but I think because that's how they work. That's what makes them tick. You know, that pursuit is what makes them tick, and as a result of that, they've achieved probably more than